I want to introduce the site file and talk about what I expect from the massings and give you some tips when you're running through your massing exercise so that you're not left with an unnecessarily complex file linking into Revit. The site file that you can use for your massings and for your topo generation in Revit exists on Canvas. It's under the A01 module as A01 site. Go ahead and download that and put it in a folder that's easily accessible for this class, probably in the same folder either on the cloud or on your computer as the rest of your Revit project files will exist in. So this site exists as a sort of imaginary topography with a surface and some contours that we'll be importing into Revit. We'll see how we can transfer that into our own TopoSolid. I've also given you a property line with some extents. The site is about 80 feet by 120 feet, and the property line is 5 feet beyond that on all sides. And we have a 60-foot height requirement here, so I want all of your massings to be contained within this zone. So an example of what a final massing looks like is this file. Where I basically took an A, B, and C, and I'm using reference of color, if not for my own layer purposes in Rhino, but also understanding how I want the diagram to start to be created in Revit. What you can do to start this process is look at some references, understand that sure, this is a diagram exercise, but that doesn't mean that it can't take on a building form. It can't absorb conversations about color, but also about materiality, and larger conversations about how abstraction occurs and how you can communicate effectively even in abstract forms. So that's what I would suggest is you look at some buildings that intrigue you, look at some diagrams that communicate through color effectively, and look at maybe some models or some art that can also inspire you. I mentioned in class 2 that I don't want the massings to be super complex. It doesn't mean that they just have to be blocky. You can have intersections of shapes, but I want your masses in Rhino to be closed polysurfaces and not to be doubly curved. You can try this out, but just know that sometimes doubly curved elements or overly complex geometry that's not closed has a hard time importing into Revit. In the future, I don't see this as impossible to get around, and your fourth assignment might be understanding that process a little bit more deeply. But for now, because there's a lot of complexity with a program like Revit to start to understand, I want to keep our models from Rhino relatively simple and modeled cleanly with closed elements.